All right, so welcome to the CPO series. This is our fall installment and the last one of the year. We have brought this together to bring CPOs and aspiring and experts together to learn, share, and engage. Dragonboat is sponsoring this series. We are a product portfolio platform for outcome-focused CPOs and teams, adopted by 3,000 teams in 60 countries. The topic today we're very excited about, two hot topics kind of converging. So product ops and how do they help CPOs? Denise is the expert. She'll be answering a lot of questions around how product ops should think about their relationship with CPOs and vice versa, and then how they can work together to really help the business drive outcomes. My name's Baji Illuminati. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Dragonboat, and I'm really excited to introduce Denise, who is a Chief Product Officer at Grocket and former VP of Product at Product Labs. She's worked at Cision, Understood, and Condé Nast as well. She collaborates with high growth orgs to up-level their products and practices to deliver stronger customer value and business outcomes. Denise has helped orgs like Sam's Club establish product operations capabilities and teams. Okay, so let's kick it off, Denise. I'd love for you to tell us what's the difference that you've seen between good and great product ops?
That was a really smart question, and I had to think about that for a second. And I think the difference, I mean, any product ops is great, right? But I think with a good product ops team, you've got folks that are helping stand up support around enabling the PMs. They might have a longer term view and some more immediate points of view on what the things that are most important and value add are. But from good to great, it's, I think, really having that simple, easy to understand framework that you can align the product ops team, the PMs, and your stakeholders around. They will clearly understand how you and your product ops folks are really enabling outcomes, how you're aligning to enable those outcomes, and at the product level, the strategic level, and the company level. So I think it's being able to tell that story with a simple framework.
I love that. Storytelling is such a critical skill that a lot of people don't necessarily think of as part of their resume.
And it's hard. It's a hard thing to learn too, right?
It's a hard thing to learn. On that note, so you mentioned outcomes. So what role does product ops play in helping teams become outcome focused?
Yeah, I think a lot of it ends up in the beginning being about alleviating the PMs on how to get the data. I think product ops is about making the sort of mechanics and how to get these sort of quant and qual inputs taken care of, so folks can really focus on the data insights themselves as opposed to getting them, the instrumenting, what tool are we using, and that helps get people closer to identifying potential outcomes and then creating that baseline of measurable outcomes. So it's really about getting out of the how we're doing it, but why we're doing it, for what sort of bigger picture outcome.
And kind of enabling that, right? So they're not necessarily doing it, but they're bringing forth the information that's needed to make those decisions.
Exactly. I've worked with companies where they had, like, a $1 billion company, they had probably 10 different product verticals, but they were all working slightly differently. So not only did it impact the product team, they were trying to figure out how to do road mapping each time, but as they worked with their stakeholders, sales was like, okay, I've got to figure out how to do go-to-market motions with this team, and they do it differently. So it's like, just give us one process. So you're spending a lot of cycle time figuring out the rules of engagement versus getting the work done. So I think that's where products can play a really big part.
And do you see, kind of to the good and the great product ops question, do you see, as you're working with organizations and talking to these product ops pros, how many are currently doing that or kind of working to get there?
Oh gosh, that would be a really unscientific, but I'll go for it.
Anecdotally.
So who's good? What would I say I'm seeing in terms of good versus great?
Yeah.
I would say it's probably pretty even. Some companies have really built some very mature functions. I'll say Athena Health, they have a team they've got a really large team and a very organized team under Tim Davenport, and they really have a point of view on how they're delivering value. And then I'll speak with folks in the industry like Hugo Froese, who's on the call today, and he is, the champion of one. And, how is he figuring out what's the best sort of piece of value he can deliver and not boil the ocean, because you can't as a party of one. So there's greatness at all levels. It just depends on sort of the maturity, I think, of the function at that org.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And then so kind of to the CPO conversation now. So how can CPOs leverage product ops? How do you see them working together?
Yeah, I think especially if you're new in an organization as a CPO, biggest piece is like getting the lay of the land, right? So product can be a really big trusted partner in terms of helping you understand the topography of strengths and potential areas of urgency, right? So you guys have probably read a lot or heard Srinivas at Calendly. He speaks a lot about product ops, and one of the case studies we cover in the workshop that I do for products labs, he talked about how he stood up a customer insight, sort of a V1 within 90 days based on existing input. So it's about just leveraging boots on the ground to sort of get a sense of where the opportunities are and sort of the biggest value or the biggest need. So that's huge. Christine Ituaro of Pendo had commented on LinkedIn recently that a leader had shared with her that, now that they have a products partner, they don't want to work somewhere else that there isn't one. And I hear that a lot from other CPOs, that it's really a key capability that either if it's not there, they want to bring it, or it gives them pause if they're considering a role that doesn't have that. Maybe the C-suite is not necessarily open to that. So it's an enabler. And I think a lot of CPOs really see this.
When you're talking to CPOs, maybe they're kind of thinking about building out their team. What characteristics should they look for when hiring product ops?
Yeah. Well, I always think about the roles, they're kind of very different. And if you can find a person that does both, so you think about the more data analytical type of person, and then someone who's got more process and community practice, if you can find one person, awesome. Chances are that's a purple squirrel. You're not going to find them. So those are two very different roles. But if you're thinking about someone to sort of get products off the ground and sort of stand up the function, I would go with someone that's more focused on the process and methods. And in that role, I would suggest someone who's got great empathy, off the chart EQ, emotional quotient, uncanny ability to sniff out the areas of greatest need. That person's an influencer. And with that storytelling, they can paint the vision of the future state. We're here today, here's where we will be. And if you have sort of focused on a roadmap and what we will and what we won't do, they're able to sort of share back that not a priority right now, but we hear you, and people feel good about that. They don't feel sort of shut down. So this person, I think, is sort of a great person that focuses on winning hearts and minds on behalf of the product team and the CPO. So that would be a characteristic, I think, for a first hire. But they're definitely data-driven as well and focused and really see the value there. So that would be one aspect. The other one would be more of a data person, and that is someone who's really got a great facility with instrumentation of data analytics, can get in there, maybe write some code to extract, but can also do the storytelling part. And that's a challenging piece, I think, with PMs, that they may have trouble pulling the data, but then what does that mean? And how do we sort of share that back to the organization, why we're focusing on something?
Do you see that there's a common path to product ops? Are they coming through product management? Are they coming from operations? What's some of the common kind of pathway to get there?
Well, in a short word, no, there's not a single common path, and you probably have seen this, but I see folks on the data side, maybe SEO analysts even, who have moved from that aspect, and that's a kind of helpful skill too, that have moved towards data analysis and storytelling. And the products teams that I've built, I have found folks that way and found they've made a really good leap there. UX researchers, thinking about the more qualitative aspect of product ops, customer support, a lot of good people from there. And PMs as well. I love seeing PMs that want to move over to that and really have a passion for making the product manager experience even better and helping, elevate the speed and quality of decision making.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And then you mentioned that a lot of this kind of soft skills around storytelling are really valuable for successful product ops. How, from both perspectives, from a interviewing perspective on the CPO side, and then from a product ops perspective, how do you see those skills coming across in interviews? Is there a good way to kind of prove that you have them or make sure that people have them?
Right. That's a really good question. I guess I would ask, if I was on the interviewing side, tell me about a time that you were able to change the mind of a stakeholder with the decision you've made. And then you're sort of looking for the emotional connection, the empathy connection, not someone who necessarily saying, here's how we're doing it. We did it. We told them we had to do it this way. And they weren't happy, but they did it. You don't want to hear that. You want to understand sort of how they had the soft skills to help convince, and you get people on board with that. So that would be one way I would try to assess that way. And from the interviewee side, how do you share that in terms of making sure that your interviewer can tell? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So if there's people here that are kind of looking to get into product ops, and really impress a CPO that they might be interviewing with, kind of coming forth with those skills.
Right. I think it's about being able to get into a situation and show your thought process in terms of discovery, in the sense of where the needs are, the highest needs, and then how you got to the point of the quick wins that you wanted to have as proof points. So I think that helps them envision, oh, this person can sort of hit the ground running and understands how to sort of focus through all of the noise and get to some wins, so we can make the case and hopefully hire some more folks later on.
Okay. And then you touched on this a little bit earlier. So when we're talking about a team of one, how do you make an impact, and how do you get some of those quick wins?
Right. And I think that with that, focusing, really being hyper focused, right? Because you can't do everything, and you've got to figure out where can you really have the most impact right away, right? And you also have to, I think, understand from your own sanity point of view, what can you control and what can you let go of? Hugo, who just dropped off the call, we were chatting about this the other day. It's like, you kind of have to have a sense of like, here's what I'm going to focus. These are the things I'm not doing. I have to make sure that people understand that. I think if you try to boil the ocean, you won't win. So you've really got to hone in on the biggest area of need and hopefully opportunity towards outcomes. So I think it's about as much saying no as it is of what we will do. And it's so tempting to want to help everybody, and they're so happy you're here. On the other hand, folks also kind of project what they perceive as product ops. And, it's a grab. I have seen folks perceive it as a grab bag of like, an associate PM, someone who'll run, project management. So it's also an education process as well of what product is and what it isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's the bandit camp of like, they're just process people, or they help enable outcomes, or what value can they provide within the organization? So there's a lot of conversation around that. I mean, where do you think they sit, or is it a combination of both?
I mean, there is value in methods and process. I don't know that that's completely what products is about. The way that, Melissa Perry and I are writing a book about products, and it's really framed around these three pillars, right? So business and data insights, the quant, customer market research, the qualitative, and then process and practices. That could be governance, that could be operating model, community of practice, but it's one aspect of it. And I think to boil down product operations to process is kind of, really distilling it in an oversimplified way. And maybe, folks that do that may not have worked with product ops or have seen product ops in a good way. So I think it's about understanding where the success stories have been. And we've certainly, seen a lot of that in the industry, Christine at Pendo building that out at Pendo, and then sort of being a champion for product ops across the industry as well. So I think it's about having an open mind. So definitely don't see it as process for process sake, but that's a whole other webinar, I think.
Big discussion. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Tell us more about your book.
Yes. So Melissa and I are co-authoring this, and it's going really well. We will definitely have it out in 2023. And it's really about, we wanted to focus on actionable advice, right? I've read a lot of great product books that sort of paint the picture of what great can look like, but it's so theoretical. It's like, well, I don't really know how to actualize this. It was really important to us that it's geared to be super practical. We wanted to focus on the actionable advice. We have case studies with orgs in a variety of maturity phases and scale. So that was really important as well, to be able to show different archetypes of product teams and challenges, so that people reading it can sort of find some identification with different lessons learned and whatnot. So super excited about that. If anyone's interested in getting updates on that, you can go to productoperations.com and sign up for updates. And more to come in 2023, but I would say it's going really well, and people are super excited to participate in the book. So we've got a number of really great case studies as well.
That's exciting. I can't wait to read it. Is it targeted towards people currently in product ops, or learning more about product ops, or who's the audience for it?
That's a good question, because I think it should be for a number of personas, right? So a CEO who has heard about it and wants it, but doesn't really know what it is, or a CEO whose team wants it, but he doesn't see the value. So for someone who's trying to sort of add this to their team at a company, I think is important as well. And then for folks who want to explore a different side of product management too, they may be product managers, but say, oh, this could be actually really interesting in terms of PMing the PM experience. So, as I tell my sort of junior, aspiring product managers, you try to serve everyone, you serve no one. But I would say the primary persona is someone who's really interested in getting started, but people who are already doing it as well will find a lot of value in terms of the case studies. And, people are really sharing very honestly, what went well and what they would have done differently. So let's all learn from, the mistakes made and also the wins that folks have had as well.
Yeah. So when we do this webinar at the end of next year and we talk about good versus great and the percentage split, we'll say, okay, the correlation is you read the product ops book and you've got a great product ops org.
Exactly.
Thank you. You're doing us all a service. We had a question from the audience around which tools product operations should be looking for.
Oh gosh, it depends on what you're trying to solve for. And I'm a big believer in tools, but I'm also a big believer that they're an enabler, and you need to understand the use case and sort of what you're trying to solve for when you're considering a tool. So if you're looking to get a more holistic portfolio view, something like Dragonboat, amazing. If you're looking for, a way to create a user insights database, maybe that's Dovetail. But I'm a big fan in sort of the lowest FI possible, lowest fidelity, and it could be a Google sheet. So if it's customer support and product and sort of enabling that flywheel, rather than getting like, an aha or some sort of feedback loop, try it out in a very simple way and understand sort of where the challenges are. Is it about making sure everybody understands the service level agreement, so to speak? If you give us input, how quickly are we getting back to you on, yes, we're using that. No, we couldn't, find a trend with that. We're going to hang on to it. But also, what do you want from this? Is it more about bugs? We want to keep that. The bugs are important, but the feedback loop is a little bit different in terms of what we're hearing from customers. So I'm a big fan of understanding first what you're trying to solve for, do it in a very low fidelity way. And then I think that helps inform what your needs are in terms of tools.
Yeah. I'm curious, there's the term opinionated software. How much do you think the tool helps create and drive the framework versus the framework should be established prior to rolling a tool out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it should be a bit of both, because you can anticipate what the tool may help enable, but with certain software tools, they've seen so many different use cases, it may sort of be oh, I didn't thought about that. So I see it as sort of a blend. You should definitely have a point of view of what you want to get towards, but be open to the other use cases that you're learning about if you're trialing it or implementing it. So that's a good question.
Yeah, I always love that term, opinionated software. Love and hate it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Yasmin asked, with other supporting functions emerging, such as research ops, design ops, how would you describe the nuance between them, and how do you manage the potential overlap?
Yeah, we actually added some content around this in the workshop that I do with Products Labs, because it's almost like battle of the ops, right? Because every team has this. I see it as a really great opportunity to sort of have this super friends council, right? So everyone has a perspective, but I think it's important to have a charter and help people understand sort of, here's what we own and here's what might kind of overlap. Here's what we own, this is where we might overlap. But being very candid and intentional about that. I think otherwise there can be little fiefdoms that start building. So that's how I would consider managing potential overlap. And so you've got engineering ops, you've got design ops, marketing ops, sales ops. I've seen some companies that may have had design ops or eng ops, and they want to sort of compress that into product ops as an overall operations, which is great. And, I have worked with some clients that have that all in as separate functions and keep them that way. So it really depends on how you want to do that. But I think long as you're clear with the teams, the internal teams, and also your stakeholders about who does what, when, it's great if we can all have an opportunity to sort of speed and lubricate, us getting towards better outcomes. I'm all for it.
Do you see typically those ops functions sitting on the same team or within the cross-functional areas?
Really cross-functional, unless it's like that situation I mentioned where it's like we had this ops, but we're expanding it and we're calling it product ops. But otherwise, they typically are sitting within those functions. That's interesting. It would be an interesting ops group. Have you ever seen that?
I've heard about potentially having the operations team as like a shared services, but I don't see that as frequently. Typically, we see them nestled within the teams. I like your super friends council, though. That's a fun way to put it. Super operational friends councils.
Exactly. Fighting for good.
Okay, so CTB asked a question. A big part of product ops is understanding the P&L of a product, as well as different data points related to a product that inform where strategy should be focused. When looking at product costs, how do you suggest approaching shared costs, such as sales and marketing, that often have individuals that are meant to be working across multiple products or portfolios? Good question.
Yeah, that's very specific. Looking at product costs, how do you suggest approaching shared costs, such as sales and marketing, that have individuals that are meant to be working? I guess it would be an allocation. That's how I would consider that, if you're sort of breaking it out that way. But you're right, P&L is a huge piece of it. And I think that's where products can really add a lot of value in terms of thinking about, what bets are we making and how do we actually measure that? Are we actually focused on those bets? I worked with some companies like, oh, this is our focus. This is, everyone gets a strategy. And then you start doing an R&D allocation and people are like, oh, we're not working on that. So that can be a big aspect of the P&L within product, a single product or a portfolio. And sales and marketing, I think, would be similar as well, just to understand where that's happening.
Okay. Should the product ops people be agnostic in terms of the product they are working on, a horizontal team across the product organization, or should they be sitting within the prod domain? For example, product ops for payments and product ops for finance, et cetera.
It's funny. I've worked with a company who introduced product ops pretty early on. And then I came in to work with them like as a maturity assessment, like, where are you guys at? What's going well? What could we be working? What's our roadmap look like? And they have gone from dedicated to shared to dedicated to shared. It really, there are benefits to both. I think you can be embedded so to speak, but still be part of the product team. And I think that there's real value there in terms of sharing, lessons learned, sharing experiences, best practices. I'm not a huge stickler, like things must be the same in every team, but if there are great ways to work, making sure everybody understands, like, this has really worked well for this team. But if you're kind of in each vertical and not necessarily, working and sort of operating within a shared model, that can be hard to propagate well. So I'm a fan of a blend, but I've seen different versions. I think Stripe has a pretty unique one. But yeah, that's my point of view on that.
And probably kind of to the topic of this webinar, it's a little harder to have that alignment between product ops and the CPO when they're embedded within the specific domains.
That's a good point too, actually. I would assume in those models that I've seen, there still is sort of a director and they're working closely with the CPO. But like I said, I like everyone to sort of have that similar point of view and sharing out pain points and sharing out successes that can be sort of put back into
the rest of the
exactly spread across. So
okay, so Vladimir asked, one of the outcomes owned by our product ops people is transparency in our progress with OKRs. What's what awesome looks like in keeping the progress in check, both within the product team and at the company-wide level?
Yeah, I think products has a real opportunity to shine here, because I've seen so many companies where you go in and it's like, oh, we have them. Are you monitoring them? They're not a set it and forget it. You really have to sort of tend and care to them. So I think that's an opportunity where products can shine in terms of creating the forums to review them, creating the cadence and making sure people understand, like, every month, every quarter, we're going to be getting together to look at this. And then what does that mean if we're not hitting them? I've personally worked in organizations like, well, we're just going to change them. Maybe there's something between that. But products keeps us on track, keeps us honest, and makes sure that we're sort of eyes on the prize. And if something has changed, markedly with the strategy, they're also proactively going back and like, here's what we were measuring. What do we need to do to tweak this? So I see products' role is creating the forum, maintaining the sort of review points, and then understanding and making sure we're holding folks accountable to those key results in terms of something that's actually measurable. I've seen OKRs set up where like, improvement, but can't necessarily measure it. So I think that products can help keep product teams honest as well.
Yeah. And that's for any operations function or any department within the whole organization, not just product.
Exactly. Alicia, I see that you just asked about the new book, when it will be released. 2023. I wish I could tell you more. First half, second half, I can't. But 2023 for sure.
But go to the productops.com website and sign up for updates.
Yep. Oh, looks like we have one more question.
Okay, perfect. Time for one more. Okay, so what would you consider to be the common attributes of product ops implementations you've observed that really helped organizations you've worked with?
Good question. Not trying to do everything at once. It's simple. It sounds so simple, but you get in, you're like, you want to do it all and you can't. Hold yourself back. You want to do it. Hold yourself back. Go in there, do a little discovery, understand the biggest need. Know that you're not going to have a complete roadmap, but just find 2 quick wins that you can get. And that's where I've seen folks being able to sort of build it up, as opposed to going wide and shallow. Go focused and deep and get those wins. So I think that's where I've seen a lot of companies add it and then make the case to start adding another products person and then building out the company, versus, well, we don't quite get what this is because you guys said you would do this, this, and this, and we haven't seen it yet. So managing expectations, under promising and over delivering.
And having those small wins to celebrate, to prove that helps.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, well, with that, we're coming up on time. Denise, thank you so much for your time. That was really, really interesting. Lots of great questions. Lastly, this completes our CPO series for the year. We put all of our content on the website, dragonboat.io/CPO series. So come tune in, see what previous experts have talked about. Denise's recording will be up soon, and we'll also send a quick follow-up with access to how to get in contact with Denise, some more resources, and a link to this webinar. Thank you all so much for joining. We encourage you to check out Dragonboat and how we can help you kind of merge those opinions in the software with some of the framework and the practice that you're bringing in. Denise, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Marcy. Thanks, everybody.
As always, and we loved learning from you. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.